To complete our discourse on the romantic genres, we cannot avoid talking about the Gothic novel, which is one of the three main types of novels represented flourishing in this period. We already spoke about Jane Austen and her novel of manners, and we also spoke a little about the historical novel, but today our focus will be on the Gothic novel. The adjective Gothic was first applied to architecture during medieval ages, and with Horace Walpole we can assist to the first link between the Gothic architecture and a Gothic story, but we'll see this in a minute. Today we talk about one of the best known novel of this type, which is Frankenstein, written by Mary Shelley when she was just 19 years old, and it was published anonymously in 1818. For sure, Frankenstein is one of the most enduring novels in English literature. Who was Mary Shelley? Mary Shelley was the daughter of the famous writer William Godwin and the feminist and philosopher Mary Wollstonecraft. We studied her last year. She was also the wife of one of the major English romantic poets, which is Shelley. The story was written just for the occasion, was a competition, a friendly competition, while Shelley and her husband, her partner, were on holiday in Geneva. Since it was a rainy day, she and her companions challenged one another to write a horror story. What is the novel about? Her novel is the story of an obsessed scientist who creates and then abandons a human being, thus provoking the latter's vengeance, desire for vengeance. The initial critical reaction to Frankenstein was not very positive, but in the 20th century, critics began to analyze the novel from a new perspective, recognizing the importance of Frankenstein as a tale of dangers, a tale on the dangers of scientific knowledge and progress, and so as a progenitor of science fiction. We can also add that this novel, the content of the novel, analyzes the morality and the ethics involved in scientific experimentation. We said that this type of novel, the Gothic novel, and in particular Mary Shelley's, is the second great novel to emerge during the Romantic Age. The genre is both a development of the Gothic novel and an early example of science fiction. If we want to find out the literary sources of this new novel, we cannot avoid mentioning the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. First of all, for the structure. As you remember, the rhyme was a story within a story. It was structured as a framing tale. Then the second thing that they have in common is the polar setting. You remember that the destination of the ship was towards the Antarctic. And another thing they have in common is that both the main characters make mistakes since they challenge the laws of nature and of God. Another source is Milton's Paradise Lost, which we studied last year, especially if we think about this attractive, charming character of Satan who comes to challenge and defy his creator. And the third one, very ancient source is Ovid Prometheus. Prometheus is a creator just as Dr. Frankenstein, and he is an example of an overreacher. So if we look back at these three literary works, we can find some elements which we can spot in Mary Shelley's masterpiece, because in the end this was recognized as her masterpiece. Then Frankenstein was influenced by the latest scientific theories of chemistry and electricity. In fact, Dr. Frankenstein created a human being through the use of electricity and chemistry. In the late 18th and early 19th century, at the time horror fiction was born, scientific technologies were progressing fast. Then Charles Darwin's evolution theory was also published. This progress was accompanied by the Industrial Revolution and new ways of production and consequent changes in society at that time. This caused the majority fear of the unknown science and its consequences, fear of the consequences these new scientific technologies could have had on humanity. Especially at that time, when common readers do not know much about it, the probability to create a monster using electricity seemed to be absolutely possible. This prospect, of course, produced horror in the reader. Horror and terror. What else influenced this novel? For sure, the theory that the philosopher Rousseau brought about. The monster here, Frankenstein's creature, is seen as a noble savage. Who is the noble savage? Is the natural man who is not corrupted by society. In fact, at the beginning, Frankenstein's monster is peaceful, with no reason for violence. But his ugliness caused hatred and fear, and this enraged him and led him to commit many murders. The use of electricity also established a further Gothic element, given that in that period electricity is not part of everyday life. Even in the context of industrialism, not everybody had electricity in his house, as we do today. So it was seen as something supernatural, mysterious, something belonging to the Gothic elements. Besides, I would also like to add that Frankenstein is a novel about how judgments based on appearance led to consequences. This idea is clearly expressed throughout the book. When people are frightened by the creature is angry at the world, and the creature feels lonely. Even the creature's own creator is scared by his creation. So, see how this novel, which was supposed to be just a friendly challenge on a rainy day, became something possibly bigger than its author thought. Finally, if we talk about the Gothic novel, we cannot leave behind talking about the first English Gothic novel, which is Horace Walpole's Castle of Otranto, published in 1774. The genre of horror fiction stands clearly in the conflict between Romanticism and the period of Enlightenment. Frankenstein is a Gothic novel because of the presence of elements such as sinister landscapes, horrifying events, supernatural elements, and villain, a gloomy atmosphere. This genre evokes several feelings in the reader, including fear, stress, anxiety, but also sympathy, delight, and relief. We can clearly link this kind of feelings to the sublime.